Hello, and thank you for joining us here today for Innovations in Youth Service. We're going to be talking about Indigenous youth housing first and embedded mental health supports. My name is Nick, I'm from Homeward Trust, and I'm going to be taking us through this presentation today. Before we dive into the presentation, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge our place here on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral lands of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples of this land, which include the Cree, Blackfoot, Dene, Iroquois, Anishinaabe, Saulteaux, Ojibwa, Nakota Sioux, Inuit, Métis, and many others whose footsteps have marked this land for time immemorial. Those whose stories, languages, and culture continue to thrive today. We acknowledge ourselves as visitors living and working in this territory. The objective for this presentation today is to start with a very brief context of Edmonton, the city in which we live and work, what drove the innovations we're going to be talking about, what the innovations are, and hopefully a couple of things you can take away to your communities after the presentation. So to set the stage, we are operating here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It's the most northerly city in North America. And currently in Edmonton, there are roughly 2,700 individuals who are facing homelessness. Of those 2,700, about 10% of them are youth, so under the age of 24, with another 60% of those youth identifying as Indigenous. And Edmonton is the second largest urban Indigenous population in Canada. It's with that context that we knew, as Homeward Trust as a system planner and community-based organization, that we needed to do something a little bit different in how we serve and support our youth. So as a system planner, we have set up a number of tables and community groups where we can help to identify gaps in services and supports, what's working really well, and where there's opportunity to take some risks. And from these groups, we have a youth advisory group, which I want to really highlight, as that's our lived experience group. So that's youth who've gone through our system or our supports or our programs, have gone through the process, identified where some of the bottlenecks are and how we could do it better and where we could take some risks. So today we're going to talk about two innovations that we brought to Edmonton to better support our youth. The first being supports that were designed and provided by Indigenous-led organizations for Indigenous youth. And the second is how we've managed to embed accessible mental health support for youth and families directly into programs. So from there, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry to get us started on the innovations.
Hi, I'm Sherry Potskin. I'm the team lead for Eagle's Nest within Bentaro. Foundation of the process for Bentaro and Native Counselling Services of Alberta. It's Indigenous led and staffed. We have designated cultural support workers, embedded cultural programming. We have supports focused to create a sense of belonging and connection, medicine meal teachings, philosophies, and practices. So Bentaro Indigenous Youth Housing First. Our youth, they are the storytellers. They are the roots of the foundation in their journey. Our program plants the seeds of growth. The youth create their own paths to move forward in a healthy way. Our team supports the youth in walking with them in their journey for the 1 year. During each phase of our program, we host sharing circles, also known as case conferences. We open in ceremony, we close in ceremony. This way it supports all of our people that are sitting at that table for that youth. We host weekly informative webinars, online reading classes, online painting classes, and we bring all supplies and resources to them. Part of it is also the transition to adulthood. Our youth were not taught skills to help them transition into adulthood. And with loss of connection and self, loss of culture, we're able to build their skills and beliefs through cultural connection. This helps with the healing their home fires and developing their self-identity. Now I'm going to pass it on to Terry.
Hi, my name is Terry Lynn Bigstone. I'm the program manager for the Eagle's Nest program. The innovations for the youth are reframing their stories, emotional intelligence, to build strong and respectful relationships, self-awareness, recognizing traditional knowledge and cultural foundational to spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and physical well-being, strengths-based approach that values the roles, nurturing guides, and assessments and planning processes. The youth hold the power to shift the dynamics of the future. If we want change, we must provide support for youth in making change possible. Indigenous youth continue to face many barriers in society, but when they have a sense of belonging and a strong cultural identity, they become resilient, powerful individuals. They have roots through their ancestral lineage, wisdom, and intelligence. They are the future leaders of their communities and can change the dynamics of historical generational trauma. Bent Arrow is our foundation to start this process.
Hi, I'm Heather. I'm a social worker and an expressive arts therapist with the Family Center. So it became clear that youth needed some mental health support, but that there were lots of barriers to getting that support. So we decided to change things up and we integrated my services right from the beginning. So from the initial intake, I got to meet them, they could see my face, we could start building that relationship. And rather than having youth come to counseling, I worked really hard to build relationships with all the youth so then the services could flow out of that relationship. We offered lots of choice in how the youth wanted to engage. So text, phone, video, going for walks in their neighborhood, online workshops. I would even go for home visits, COVID permitting, with the masks and the distance. So what didn't work, we found that kind of a traditional referral style didn't work. There are a lot of steps to go through in a referral process to get to counseling. So we brought the services to them instead. So rather than meeting only in the therapist's office, then they could be in their safe space and I could go to them. Traditional counseling doesn't often work for youth. To go into an intimidating building and sit on a couch and be stared at by a therapist may not work for them. So I wove in a lot of expressive arts therapy, which is just another way of working with emotions, and it provides an activity to focus on. So then we could be shoulder to shoulder rather than that face to face, and it was less intimidating and centered the relationship. So the impact has been that more youth have been engaged with mental health supports, and it decreases that stigma because we're just normalizing mental health language as we go. And trauma often happens in a relationship, and so the repair can happen through those healthy attachment relationships. Supporting youth regularly with text check-ins, encouragement, information referrals, kind of whatever they need, helped them to then focus on their housing. And then the housing support workers and outreach workers could focus best on their gifts and talents. So one thing I think, I've got a few things there that you can do tomorrow. So just get out of your office and go to them. It will make a world of difference. And offer the variety of approaches and how you engage. Integrating it right from the start is just another person on their team who will check in on them really helps. And just embracing that whole spectrum of support from prevention to intervention to postvention. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa. I'm the manager with Native Counselling Services of Alberta Youth Housing First program. And what I wanted to share today is how our agency and our program have a holistic approach. So yes, our number one goal is to work with our young people. However, to do good work within our community, we recognize that when we're Indigenous led and we're Indigenous staffed, that we also have a lot of lived experience. And so what we do in our work is we go to our resiliency model. And so our resiliency model comes from Indigenous research methods, which we receive from elders. And what we really focus on is the understanding of interconnectedness and what does that mean in reality and relationships and self-determination. And another thing that we do as a program is that everyone that works with us has an understanding of historic training. So we know where we are within the landscape. And when we know where we are, we support our youth in an embodied way to help them understand where they are within historic trauma. Another thing that we're very mindful of is that when we as people, as human beings, when we're on our healing journey, that we actually are able to connect with our youth in a more authentic way. And that has been very impactful in our practice. And all of that to say is that we're creating an atmosphere of safety and care. So when we can go out and do quality service, as well as because our program started during the pandemic, we really became aware of the importance of mental wellness and mental wellness strategies. And so what that means for us is that as a team, we really work to embody what mental wellness strategies are for ourselves. So we recognize and are being able to model that with our young people. And also, how do we embody sacred teachings? And so, and again, flowing back to how we can do quality service delivery with our youth. Okay, so, and what that looks like for us in practice is that we're learning to listen more and talk less. When we look at self-determination, we really want to create space for youth to be able to have a voice, a choice, and recognize their value and what that looks like in practice. We also work on the circle. No one is above and no one is below. Our job is to walk beside our young people and helping them on their journey, and most importantly, finding housing. And we also do heart-led work where we're very cognizant that we're doing a hand up, not a handout. And that's embodied in our practice as well. And like Sherry and Terry were talking about, we also have similar ways of being in terms of some of our practices. However, our foundation comes from role modeling and showing and not telling, and being very mindful in terms of the critical thinking and how we see the totality of our youth, and doing it in an intentional way where we talk about it every week. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. That's kind of the brief overview, and I know we've just thrown a lot of information at you through this presentation in a very short amount of time. So we did want to leave a couple of key takeaways from each of the programs that you could bring back to your program or community to maybe help or shape the way you serve your youth. So number one is that the youth hold the power to shape the future, not only their own future, but the future of the communities in which they live and which they're growing into adulthood. Number two, get out of your office and go to them. That's been so hard in the pandemic. Everything is living online. It's like we're living in a video game, but having that opportunity to get out and get to their front porch to be able to provide those supports and services makes a world of difference. Number three, being present to see the youth and focus on their strengths. They may be suffering now, but they're just at the start of their journey, and there's a lot of healing ahead, and we get to walk beside them on that, and we need to focus on their strengths as we walk beside them. And then the last piece of advice is intentionally listening to the input of the youth who have been through the process. It's only with those youth voices that we are able to shape how we provide services in a way that's going to be meaningful for them, keep them engaged, and help them to feel heard as they walk this journey towards healing and wholeness. So thank you from all of us to all of you that are at the conference. We really appreciated spending this time with you, and we hope we gave you something that you can take and bring back to your communities. Enjoy the rest of the conference and have a wonderful day. Take care.